thanks everyone for being patient, and also thanks the next speaker for being patient. So we've got Jayesh Salgaonkar coming up next. Jayesh is going to be talking about shifting left for API performance testing. Jayesh comes to us from PALO IT, which is a global innovative consultancy, and of course he's based in Singapore. So Jayesh, over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Akhil. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here on the 10th API Day that's happening in Singapore amongst all of you. Thank you to the organizers for having me here. My agenda for the day is going to be very simple. I'm going to talk about some advantages and disadvantages of microservices architecture from the backend development perspective. Some of the challenges that we have learned in our experience, and of course the solutions, and how we tackled those challenges and achieved the shift left for one of our biggest clients that we worked recently with them. And there's great learnings that we have, which I would like to socialize and share with you guys. But before that, it's an introduction time. Hi, I'm Jayesh Salgaonkar. I love helping software engineering teams to design their quality engineering strategies, plan to basically achieve their functional and non-functional requirements. I'm also a keen explorer on the new innovative technologies that are coming up in the market and finding solutions to the problems. I'm associated with PALO IT for over 7 years now. And we at PALO IT believe tech for good, which means delivering services to the community take precedence over doing the business. And in the effort, we have been honored with the 8th B Corp certification. It's the only 8th B Corp certified company in Singapore. Data transformation, digital transformation, agile transformation are the core businesses for the company. Coming to the advantages of microservices architecture, we all know that it delivers self-contained and independent deployable modules. It allows us to develop organic applications, which basically scales horizontally by adding more features and modules. Enable event streaming technologies for ease of integration, single responsibility principles, less dependency, and of course, dynamic scaling and faster release cycle. But with these advantages, there are some disadvantages that we have come across in past few years is when you're working in a very complex microservices driven architecture project, it brings in all the possible complexities of having the distributed teams associated with having the distributed teams and the systems. Difficult to manage large number of services, of course, only when the number of services go beyond the capacity of the management of the team. Higher chances of failures when there's ever-growing number of APIs interact with each other and they fail. Latency issues, load balancing issues, and infrastructure capacity management. And of course, the complexities coming over testing for the distributed environments. Having been exposed to projects under various domain design under the microservices architecture with ample number of APIs, the quality engineering team at PALO IT have identified some key challenges, which I believe, or we believe as a team, that every other team working on this subject should basically plan for or strategize for. And those challenges are collaboration challenges. If it's very, very difficult, if you are having a complex distributed systems and you don't have a collaborative tool or collaborative mindset, basically to share information is one of the challenges that we have seen. Reproducing the same behavior in different environments is something which we have observed as one of the second challenges. The resiliency, fault tolerance, and performance evaluation for the failures or the network latencies. Different teams have different strategies, and that kind of creates some of the third level of challenge while working in a distributed and a complex project. And the fourth one is of course, the functional correctness and completeness of the system, which basically we can associate it with the bounded context of that microservices. Managing those details and updating and keep them updated is one of the challenges that we have. That's the fourth challenge that we have identified working in this complex environments. Now, what happens after having identified all these challenges? The team basically is working very dedicatedly on finding solutions to them. We have explored many, I would say, open source and proprietary tools to find out which one is best, which kind of cover maximum challenges that we have on hand. And since 2020, what we have done is following the solutions from Karate Labs, specifically the Karate API. It's a one-stop shop for us for team collaboration, functional validation, non-functional simulations, mocks generation, and so many features in a single unified framework. Karate, it's a growing tool. It's a growing open source tool. There are a lot of features available in there. They also support web automation testing, but we haven't tested yet. And Palo IT being an agile company, Karate solutions, specifically Karate API, suits in perfectly in the sweet spot of the culture where we have the Scrum team delivery model. So it fits in very well for collaboration and delivering their solutions. Now, with this background of what basically we have learned about microservices and one of the solutions that we use, I would like to take one of our recent examples and share with you how we used this information or the knowledge of the tool and the experience that we have gathered to find the solutions and the pathways to find the shift left for the performance testing. Yes. So don't worry. This is just a single thread of a request and response data flow that I have taken from a very complex architecture that we have worked recently for one of our clients. It has a mobile app, which is in a beta version at this moment, which basically the UI or the designs are not confirmed yet, but it's functionally working for the client. It makes the API calls via the public internet to the API manager, which is there to manage the synchronization and the API structuring. There's a load balancer, and there's an AKS cluster, and this entire infrastructure is within the Azure cloud. That's why you can see some managed services from Azure are used there as well. We use Karate to do the functional testing of this app. And the idea behind using Karate is not to define individual API calls, but to sequentialize the API calls to map to the business flows, how the end users will be executing on the mobile app. And the second key point was to trigger the tests exactly at the same point where the business users will be triggering, which is through the public internet. And to achieve the requirement, the Cucumber Gherkin syntax of this framework helped us tremendously to achieve the focused testing, the functional testing of either the individual microservices or the group of microservices together in the sequential order of their business flow in a very highly collaborative manner between the business and the tech team. This feature also allows us to have the mocks, the business and the tech assertion in the feature files, command line execution, exhaustive Cucumber reporting, and many more features. I recommend all of you to have gone through this GitHub of Karate GitLab if not done yet. It's very, very impressive. Now, when coming to the performance testing, even though our motive was different, but the idea is still the same. The motive is basically triggering the load, right? Injecting the load, but in the same sequential manner of APIs call, which align to the business functionality and exactly at the same point where the end user will trigger it, right? For that, we use the Karate Gatling integration, which comes by default with the framework. The only thing that it demands us is to understand the simulation class of Gatling, which is written in Scala, and some of its parameters like the protocol, defining the scenarios, and the injection setup, and that's it. Once we learn this, we are good to generate the load. It also allows us to define the thread pool executor setup, the command line execution, Gatling reportings, and so many things. So that's how we basically planned our functional and non-functional aspect. Now coming to the integration, continuous integration aspect, right? This is the place we believe we either make it or break it. Let's talk about a specific Scrum team. I believe that their success story is written in how they have strategized their delivery pipeline, right? Having independent pipelines for different tests, well, it's not just having different pipelines, but the architecture, their design is something has to be aligned to what you want to deliver to the client and not to the software that you're building. The dependencies has to be very, very minimalistic for it to be executed faster. The ease of engineering and maintenance should be there, and the ease of sharing of information on the handshake between different complex teams, right, should be quite easier. And red to green strategy, this is basically derived from this mechanism is derived from the extreme programming, which basically comes handy in all those aspects of software engineering, which says that you design your pipeline first and then write your application code. This is the best way of delivering your solution with quality, rather than moving your pipeline or customizing your pipeline to the way how your software has evolved. That basically takes you always to the failure zone. Now, well, all said and done with respect to specific tooling, with specific continuous integration strategy, the golden question that I have to answer to all my stakeholders is how much of effect does it has on my testing efforts? With in terms of basically writing the automation scripts, managing the pipelines, and basically execution and testing in itself. With very little analysis and assessment, what we have found that 60% of our testing efforts have been put into writing the functional tests for the APIs or the microservices that we have built. Make sure that the bounded context is there and your microservices delivers what they're supposed to deliver. And this 60% also includes defining the pipeline, the execution pipeline, and also the maintenance part of it. And only the 10% of the effort is put in managing the simulation class from Scala to run the Gatling and also including the non-functional pipeline. The 30% of the entire efforts were put in to validate the UI requirements or the UI verification and validation. So that's what effort this strategy has on, right? When we think about having the shift left components, bringing it back at the coding. And these are some of the great learnings that we had by implementing the right tooling and the right continuous integration strategies. The majority of the API functionalities are validated at the white box level. The UI means very specific UI test verifications and validations are only left for the UAT and the UI scripts. The real-time shift left for the performance testing is achieved without having any dependency on the mobile app build. The infrastructure or the environment vulnerabilities were identified at the very early stage of the program. And looking at that, we were also able to schedule the performance testing in the beta version with our UAT users for the load injections. And they had quite a request for us to do. They wanted to do the load performance testing with 10,000 concurrent users, 25,000 concurrent users, and 50,000 concurrent users, and so on. And the last, but the best of it, when we got the feedback from the client that they feel confident of the infrastructure and the quality that we have delivered in terms of the microservices delivery. So these are the very, very key and very, very authentic feedbacks that we have got from the client recently, which I have shared with you. And that's it from me for the day. Thank you for hearing me out. Happy to have your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jayesh. And, you're one of the few people that I really love because you finished either on time or early. Hey,
that's
so
what
I do
do.
have yeah, that's it. I do have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
One is, and this is something we struggle with in our world all the time. So I guess in the context of release management, so you talked about kind of going through using Karate to do functional, non-functional tests, etc., and then building out into your CI/CD pipeline. As an engineering manager, one of the big things for me and for my teams is a confidence in the quality of whatever it is we're doing the release for. So I'd love to know, as you do API testing specifically, because of course we're in API days,
Yes.
what sort of metrics do you report on?
Thank you, Akhil, for the question. It's quite a very interesting question, right? To be honest, I don't think from metrics perspective, but I think from the bounded context perspective. I'm very deeply in love with the DDD, where we call domain-driven designs,
Yeah.
where I try to identify and understand what's basically is when I can say that a particular microservice is complete, right? Those becomes my boundaries, and with anything and everything to achieve that becomes my metrics, right? And having those, having said this, it's not just important to define those boundaries, but then having them in your feature file and getting it verified by everyone and keeping everybody on the floor at the same path that unless we achieve this, it's not complete, right? Of course, we are going to have some slight in delays in terms of availabilities and all that, but I think that's the crux, right? So when we understand the complexity, when we understand the scope, define it in the features, and keep it ready for the team.
Yeah, fantastic, cool. Okay, so and then I guess if I can kind of poke at that a little bit further.
Sure.
So that's great. I mean, talking about bounded context is awesome because, right, every API, every microservice is effectively a black box, right? You don't need to know what's happening inside of it as long as the front door is open and you can walk through it using, if it's REST or GraphQL or gRPC or whatever, a properly framed request, and then of course you get a response back for it.
Absolutely.
But I guess if you look at an overarching microservices architecture, right? And you've got events kind of floating around everywhere. Within your bounded context, you still have code or logic and databases and so forth, right? Or database, let's say. How do I know at a macro level? So, for example, this is actually something recently that did happen, right? Which is my engineering manager came to me and my operations manager came to me and basically said, the thing that you want to push out to release just doesn't work, right? And or this is from the ops manager to the engineering manager, and the engineering manager is like, it all looks green on my dashboard. So there's almost like a missing construct and language that we had to work through to say, well, how do we define that confidence and quality? Where one person was just looking at, is it green, 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 thumbs up, go out there. And the ops manager is looking at it going, hang on, but if I put service A together with B, together with C, together with 13 other ones, suddenly the system doesn't work. So I guess my metrics question was related to that, is how do you make sure that the entire ecosystem is working and working well to give us the confidence?
Awesome. Okay, maybe I missed out on that context. Thanks for clarifying, Akhil.
That's right. Yeah.
I will just try to answer that question with one answer. Is basically a lot of collaboration, and collaboration happening not at the tech side, on the business side. That's when I was discussing about this with some of my friends about my presentation, and I said from green, from orange to green or red to green, that extreme programming practices, they say it's not about what you're building, it's about why you're building it, right? And from technology perspective, we are always very keen about what. We are always like, even I am an enthusiast who likes to learn about innovation, but we have to understand that innovation technology is not for technology, it's for the business purpose. And that's where I basically, my jet just passed me, sorry.
I was wondering what that was. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the whole key about it. It's about, so what is a complete? So what when somebody says your application is not working, what exactly is not working? It's the tech component not working. It's the business component not working. All together is a collapse. So that basically is a matrix for me.
Yeah. So okay, fair enough. And I think that's as good an answer as I think you can provide me without knowing the actual details of what was going on.
Yes.
I might sneak in one more question because we've got a bit of time still left.
Wow.
So within the context of, I'll give you the scenario and then I'll kind of come to my question, right? So we have,
sure.
In our world, we have a modern kind of digital platform, right? It's all microservices running in kube containers, GraphQL endpoints fronted by a Hasura front end, everything running in AWS. But there is an older set of technologies that, for example, an SAP ERP system, a bunch of kind of other custom systems that have been built up over time, 10 years, 20 years type of things. One of the big questions we have faced and have come out with an interesting approach to doing it, and I'd love your thoughts on it, is how do you do performance testing, right? So you talked about Gatling, you've got your akka scripts and so forth. But if I now go and hit our ERP, which is not designed for web scale or pseudo web scale type production, or performance rather, how do you manage that as you go around consulting with all these different vendors and companies? How do you guide them on here's how you do performance testing without killing your ERP?
Very, very interesting question. This is very, very interesting question. Honestly, it's not that very often I get this question, but this is something that we have been discussing for past so many months with my tech leadership, that how are we going to manage all these things? And the only solution that we have come up to, or maybe from my perspective, which I would like to share, Akhil, which may not be complete for you, is whenever we are working with any of the legacy system, we know that it's legacy, right? And it's due for change. But we are not doing it for certain XYZ reason. And that legacy system is still running in this 21st century because of some of its very, very core functionalities, right? Let's appreciate it for that.
Sure.
Now, since we are appreciating the functionality of that, we also have to appreciate its capacity, right? Let's just say that it cannot handle more than 10,000. Somehow we have come to that value that, the capacity of the services cannot handle 10,000 users confidently, right? Now, because now it's basically that you have to have that scale, and you have to weigh in what do you love more. Do you love to have more number of confident users to use your features, or do you still love that functionality? And unfortunately, there is no replacement for it, right? So keeping that aside, coming to the digital transformation part of it, the digital tech stack that you have, that is immensely capable of having millions of people on board, right? Well, now we knowing that your backend is only 10,000 capacity, is it worth spending that much resources to test millions of performance testing? I will say no, right? So there is this up and down in the scale, right, which you have to manage with respect to what do you want, what do you have, and what do you foresee. Of course, going ahead, of course, when you get rid of those legacy systems, you will have more stronger systems which are equally capable of your digital tech stack, and you can just scale up like anything. Of course, with testing.
Yes, of course. And look, thank you for that. And you can send me your consulting invoice later. But at some point when I'm up in Singapore, I'm happy to pick your brain on it and also talk you through what we ended up doing, which I think was a pretty clever way to get around it. But and I'm sure you can tell me all the ways you could do it better. But Jayesh, thank you so very much for your presentation. It was really lovely, and hopefully everyone got as much out of it as I did.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks.